Hey, everybody, happy Friday. Hope you're having a good day. And we're still focusing on poetry and focusing on riddles. So we will write responses that demonstrate understanding of increasingly challenging texts with and across genres. And I will learn to interpret poetry so that I deepen my understanding and sharpen my inferencing skills. And then we will be thinking about how do poetic devices enhance our connection to and understanding of poetry. So we've got a lot of good reading to do. We're going to do some riddles because once again, poetry is connected to riddle skills. But first, let's do our positive affirmations. They're so good for us to get ourselves thinking positive on purpose. So tell yourself what to think and what to believe. Let's be positive. What are you? I am smart, confident, and successful. Yes, you are. And if you don't feel like it, hey, put that old thinking away. It's time to think new. And how do you feel about school? I love school. It's so much fun. And for those of us that really don't like school, yeah, say it again. I love school. It's so much fun. And thinking it makes it easier to go through the motions and do what you're supposed to do. How do you feel about getting your work done? It's so cool. I love getting my work done. Yes, give yourself a round of applause. You rock. All right, so riddle skills. If you were in class yesterday or watched yesterday's video, we know that riddle skills are what make poetry interesting. You know, I used to like the easy poems when I was in school. Oh yeah, they're easy to understand. That's a good poem. But the ones that didn't make a lot of sense to me, I didn't like that. It doesn't make sense. It's not obvious. I didn't like it. But as I learned to use riddle skills to figure out poems, it has gotten so much easier and so much fun. So here's a good riddle. Take me out and scratch my head. I am now black, but once was red. What am I? And you want to think about the details, just like you would with a poem or anything else. You figure out the details, you use your imagine, and you come up with something that works. I bet some of you already figured this one out, haven't you? It's old school. Let's give us a clue in case you need it. And you don't see these too often every day. If you used your riddle skills, you may probably have figured out that I am a match. Most of us use lighters these days, right? We don't use matches, but matches are usually red, and after they're burned, they turn black. Very cool. Let's look at another riddle. A man was just doing his job when his suit was torn. Why did he die 3 minutes later? What? He was just doing his job. His suit was torn. Why did he die? We got to use our imagination. Think about it. What was his job? If you figure that out, you've gotten it. And in what job would you die if your suit was torn? What is the answer? What do you think? Here's a clue. He was up high. He was doing his job. His suit was torn. What's the answer? He was an astronaut. Oh, he was out in space. If you got that one, woohoo, pat yourself on the back. You figured it out. You were smart. If you didn't figure it out, that's okay. You're still a good person. So poetry, there are things that you see in poetry and are pretty common. And I'm sure you've heard about this your freshman year and your sophomore year. But let's review them again just to remind ourselves about poetic devices, kind of like we were talking about with the narrative, you know, things like figurative language and all that kind of stuff. So there are some specific ones that are in poetry, and figurative language is definitely in poetry. And you'll be noticing that in a minute here. So the one that stands out quite a bit is alliteration. And if you're saying the same sound at the beginning of the word, right, the starting sound, like the price of the previous one, the P and the P. Another one I like to say is so soft, the sound of silence, all those repeating S's. Now, the difference between the repeating sound is the sound in the middle. Usually it's a vowel sound, and this one's called assonance. So two or more words in the same line that have a similar vowel sound, like the owl flew out of the room, all those O sounds in a row make assonance. And it can be different vowels. It can be like, the A or the I or the E or any of those sounds. When they're repeating, your line has assonance in it. Repetition, and we're going to see repetition in the poem we're going to read a little bit later. The repeated phrase, line, or stanza. Repetition is used to emphasize a feeling or idea, to create rhythm and or develop a sense of urgency. And metaphor, a directly stated comparison. Our defensive line was a rock wall last night. Man, when you make a metaphor, you are saying this is that, and it's a very strong comparison. Onomatopoeia, attempt to spell out a sound. She heard the cat meow, so crash, boom, snap, crackle, pop. All that's onomatopoeia, right? We know that one. Imagery, pictures drawn in the reader's mind by the words of the poet. So remember how I always say the magic is in the details. You give very sharp details so that your reader can picture what you're saying, and you are using imagery. Enjambment. When a line is enjambed, it goes faster. And that just means a line of the poem doesn't have any punctuation. So ending the line in the middle of a phrase or sentence, I don't slow down at the end of the line because there's no punctuation there. But if it was like ending the line in the middle of period, well, that would make you stop. That would slow you down. Enjambment means there's no punctuation at the end of the line. That's all it means. And if you're reading a sentence that's enjambed, you're going to go faster. What's the opposite? End stopped. Ending a line with punctuation, period. It slows things down. So if you end a line, if you end a stanza with a period or an exclamation point or even a comma, it's going to slow you down in your reading and make you stop and think. End stopped. And personification, giving human characteristics to inanimate objects. Example like the teeth of a comb. Oh, does the comb really have teeth? No, it doesn't have teeth. We're personifying it. And of course, the simile, comparing using like or as. She was clever as a fox. And it's not as strong a comparison as a metaphor is. You can see a lot of similes in a poem, and they don't really stop things. But when you have a metaphor, it can slow things down and stop things. So let's do another riddle. I cover what's real, hide what's true, but sometimes I bring out the courage in you. What am I? So think about that. Use your riddle skills. Use your poetry interpretation skills and tell us what's going on in this poem. Let's give us a clue. Usually, women wear it. Cover what's real, hide what's true, but sometimes I bring out the courage in you. Some women, right, put on makeup and they feel stronger because they're made up. So that's a fun riddle. One more. You throw away the outside and cook the inside. Then you eat the outside and throw away the inside. What am I? What are they talking about there? What could this mean? Remember, pay attention to the details, use your imagination, and come up with your interpretation, your inference. Let's give us a clue. I'm at picnics and barbecues. So we're definitely talking about food. Maybe you've already figured it out. Maybe you know. I'm an ear of corn. Or a chicken, right? Because for corn, you take off the shuck, you cook it, so you take off the outside, and then you eat the inside. You eat the corn, but then you throw away the corn cob. Or the same thing with chicken. You pluck off the feathers, you cook the chicken, you eat the meat, and then you throw away the bones. So either one could work. That's kind of fun. All right. That's enough riddles. Let's move on to what's next. Let's get to Caged Bird by Maya Angelou. And Caged Bird is a really powerful poem. It's been around for a while. Maya Angelou, she just passed away recently. Very well-known poet, very famous poet. And she's written lots of amazing things. But this poem is very interesting. And we want to kind of figure out what's going on. Let me tell you right now, she's not really writing about a bird. The caged bird is a metaphor that goes throughout the whole poem. And you want to kind of figure out for yourself, well, who is the caged bird? Who is she talking about? Who could she be talking about? And that's going to be our subject for our discussion question. So notice the poetic devices used in the poem. Think about the following question. How do the poetic devices enhance your connection and understanding? She has a lot of poetic devices in this, a lot of the ones that we mentioned earlier, and you want to be thinking about that. And then once again, who might the caged bird of the poem be considered? Who might the caged bird of the poem be considered an extended metaphor for in today's society? So think about people for today. Think about what she actually meant. Let's see what you can come up with. All right, let's read through this poem. Caged Bird by Maya Angelou. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wings in the orange sun rays, and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. Powerful poem. And of course, we can all tell right away, there's quite a bit of repetition in this poem, isn't there? She has that refrain that she comes back to, right? About the caged bird. And it's powerful. Let's look at that. A bird that stalks down his narrow cage can barely see through his bars of rage. Why would a bird in a cage be enraged? His wings are clipped. He can't fly. His feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. And here's that repetition, right? The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of... And this is actually part of another poem that she borrowed and she uses in her poem. Maybe we'll talk about that later in class or sometime. But once again, who is the caged bird? What kind of person is Maya Angelou talking about? And why would this person be in a cage? And that's the question that I want you to answer. If you go into Schoology, discussion question, and give us your opinion. If you are doing this instead of going to class today, very cool, glad you're here. Be sure you answer the discussion question because that's how you're going to get your attendance. So be sure and put into discussion today's work, Friday, September the 18th. Answer the question. And remember, use your riddle skills. There's also a copy of the poem in Friday's work, and there's a copy of the poetic devices. So you have both of those available to you. All right, so let's read this poem one more time because you cannot get a poem like this, especially a poem as long as this, in just one reading. So once again, think about the poetic devices. Of course, the caged bird itself is a metaphor, and there's definitely repetition. And let's also think about the alliteration, the assonance, if there's any, and what metaphors and similes you might see besides just the caged bird itself. All right, let's read it one more time. Caged Bird by Maya Angelou. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with the fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with the fearful trill of things unknown, but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, use your riddle skills. Come up with your interpretation. What is the caged bird a metaphor for? And put your answer in the discussion question for today, Friday, September the 18th. I look forward to seeing what you come up with, and hope I see you on Monday. Get lots of rest this weekend, and take care of yourself. Bye-bye.